Greetings Whovians and welcome to Timey Wimey Review. Since we had the announcement that Doctor Who will return for Christmas 2026, I have a feeling, or I just felt that since that announcement and that statement from the BBC, that there was something just a little bit off about it. In my previous video, I kind of did that joke of it kind of felt like how Woody was addressing all the rest of the toys in Toy Story with the staff meeting, and oh, by the way, Disney has pulled out and RTD has just agreed something. That's kind of the vibe that I got. There was just something just a little bit off, and also that Disney has been incredibly quiet about their partnership or involvement with Doctor Who and the BBC. Just literally, I don't want to play with you anymore vibes from, again, Toy Story 2. But then we got a article from Deadline that goes into a bit more detail about Disney's involvement and why they've pulled out, and a lot of sort of speculations of Doctor Who was too woke for Disney, the writing wasn't very good, the ratings was terrible. So I thought we can go through this article, kind of break it down a little bit, and just kind of go through my overall thoughts on where Doctor Who is now and where it should go, or what should happen since this announcement of the Christmas return in 2026. Bit of a sister to the kind of RTD what went wrong era video that I did a few weeks ago as well. So please hit the subscribe button. That will really help out this channel. So close to the target of 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2025. So thank you for those who have already subscribed and liked and commented. Really appreciate it. But let's talk about this article from Deadline. Deadline has spoken with multiple sources in Doctor Who's orbit who say the Disney deal fell apart for a variety of reasons, including concerns over Ncuti Gatwa's show's failure to break out from its established fan base and its big-ticket budget. Others suspect that fears of a woke backlash may be a factor, as Doctor Who has embraced diverse storytelling under showrunner Russell T Davies. So the first sort of paragraph from Deadline is, it wasn't for the long term. It was pretty apparent from early on that this wasn't for the long term, says a former Disney executive. Everyone got the impression that it wasn't doing what it needed to do on Disney Plus to be sustained. Another person close to Doctor Who adds, the writing has been on the wall for ages. There's been a complete lack of enthusiasm over at Disney. Announced in October 2022, Disney agreed to co-produce Doctor Who was inked at the height of the streaming wars, just before Bob Iger walked back into the building and started scaling back spending. It was hailed at the time as an unprecedented pact, bringing together two giants of entertainment. But the ex-Disney insider says the soon detected regret at spending so much on Doctor Who. The show's budget was between £6 and £8 million per episode. We understand putting the value of the deal at as much as £168 million. I'm thinking that's overall from seasons 1 and 2. The former Mouse House employee notes a lack of marketing firepower behind the brand, nowhere near the might of brands like Marvel or Star Wars, creating something of a chicken and egg scenario, whereby it became harder for Doctor Who to cut through to American audiences. It certainly wasn't being shouted about as a big success, adds this person. An executive at BBC Studios, which owns Doctor Who and oversees international sales, says it's never felt like Disney were making much of a deal about the iconic series, which has been on the British screens for more than 60 years. Disney sources have countered this with one telling the Times of London that a lot of marketing muscle was put behind the show. So let's break down this paragraph. Starting with that tagline, it wasn't for the long term. So I don't know, a bit of a PR spin on that one, really. We've heard this quite a lot. Sadly, over the last 2 seasons, particularly over this last year, it was always meant to be 2 years. We've had that from Disney, we've had that from Ncuti Gatwa. So yeah, of course, you know, nothing lasts forever, but I don't think 2 years was definitely the finale of that that experiment. I think if it was absolute success in series 1, then it would have gone on for at least 2 more seasons, I think. Really, I think the magic number should have been 3 seasons of a commitment for Disney and BBC. I think that would be a very good testament of where the show is, and sort of iron out some of the issues that was happening, or what was not working in terms of whether it was being released at the wrong time of the year, the whole sort of arguments between the being, particularly for the UK, being dropped on BBC iPlayer at midnight and then 8 a.m. and then being broadcast live on BBC One. That definitely had a detrimental impact, which we'll get on to later on in this article. But one of the sort of standouts from that paragraph is about the deal itself when it was first put pen to paper back in 2022. So that was under a different CEO of the Disney streaming platform. So that was before Bob Iger walked back into that. So I can understand Mr. Iger probably looking at everything. And one of the things that he did wanted to sort out and cut costs in was the Disney Plus package and its services, because obviously Disney Plus was riding high in 2021, 2022, in the whole sort of height of the streaming wars during the pandemic. It was getting to a point, if not bigger than Netflix, but then obviously kind of life kind of got back to normal. So obviously the height of the streaming wars is still there, it's still prominent, but Disney's Plus's losses was mounting up, and that was obviously Bob Iger's job to fix. And when you've kind of been given Doctor Who, that's not really something that they own, it is just literally there to sort of finance and make it sort of as if a sort of international sort of make it a worldwide sort of event. I feel that probably that was not on top of his big list, really. It's like walking into a shop. The shop is all yours, but you have to sell this brand of ice cream for 2 years. But I don't like this brand of ice cream. Tough. It's staying in your shop for 2 years. The enthusiasm would have changed dramatically when someone else was not on board, or didn't initially inherit this deal. And I think that is definitely apparent with the marketing for Doctor Who from Disney Plus side, and to a certain extent BBC's as well, because they were very late at sort of advertising and publicising Doctor Who when it was coming back for season 1 in 2024. We did get some really gorgeous trailers, don't get me wrong, but that was only like, a month or two before the show was coming back. I would say there was a lot more advertisement from Disney standpoint for season 1, but not as much for season 2. And just the odd little things where they only had like the TARDIS at, I think, the Disney park in California, but nowhere else in their wonderful kingdoms. They could have had one in France, they could have had it in Tokyo, could have really ramped it up. The fact that it wasn't part of the Disney D23 Expo as well, or very little was really being mentioned. And even like at this year's San Diego Comic Con, the writing was on the wall that Disney, as much as they sort of put on the money, they wasn't sort of the big sort of bandwagon of, hey, we've got this exclusive show from the UK for worldwide release, come and watch it, it is fantastic. I didn't get that vibe from Disney. The next headline or tagline in this paragraph is ratings flop. So Doctor Who's performance has been far from stellar in the US. This year's season failed to register in Nielsen or Luminate streaming charts. Meanwhile, the entertainment strategy guy branded Doctor Who's debut on Disney as one of the biggest flops of 2024. There was also a serious lack of awards buzz around the series, which only managed one Primetime Emmy nomination, what was for Outstanding Choreography for Scripted Programming in 2025, during its time on Disney+. Yeah, I do think that was sad that the only nomination was for choreography. You know, it should be for writing or acting at the very least, or even some special effects or directing. Something should have been a bit more prominent for the Emmy Awards, really, for that. So yeah, I'm gonna have to concede that yeah, that was not. It was a red flag, really, for Disney. On the BBC, Doctor Who has seen an alarming drop of viewing figures. Season 15 averaged 3.8 million viewers, according to gold standard 28-day viewing figures from Barb, the UK's official ratings agency. This represents a decline of 1 million on the prior season, the first starring Gatwa and produced by Jane Tranter's Bad Wolf. Both Gatwa's seasons were down on Jodie Whittaker's concluding season in 2021, which was watched by 5.2 million people. A period that was not considered to be vintage Doctor Who, the ratings were not up to much, someone involved in the series ruefully acknowledges. And yes, ratings has been a big talking point in Doctor Who. We've seen that splashed all over sort of tabloids and online news articles as well about the ratings for Doctor Who. I don't think it's been as dramatic as everyone's made it out to be, but it's it's not been fantastic either. I do think a lot of it, particularly in the UK, was you kind of subdivided a lot of the audience. I felt with the being exclusive on BBC iPlayer from midnight for season 1 and 8 a.m. for season 2, but then being broadcast live on BBC One around 6-7 o'clock. I think that had a detrimental effect on the ratings here in the UK, because you kind of got a few that are, like myself, was watching it on iPlayer, and then a lot, was just sticking to the live broadcast. I was on board with it, on board with it. I thought it was like a nice idea to have, like, you can sit down and watch it with your family at 8 o'clock, grab your bowl of cereal and go for it, or you can make it a bit of a midnight event. So I kind of got the feel for it, but I just don't think it worked for Doctor Who, unfortunately. Really, what they should have done is seen what was kind of the trends were for what was going on in the UK, and if anything, made season 2 each episode worldwide television event. So it should have just stuck to one time and one time only, and I think that should have been BBC leading the charge on that one. We are having every episode broadcast at 7 o'clock or 6:45, something like that, and it'll be the same wherever you are around the world. I think that would have been a lot more stronger. I think it would have easily have bumped up the ratings a bit more. We had it for the season 2 finale, so I don't see why they couldn't have done that for season 2 all the way through it. I think that's, again, sort of what I was sort of looking at towards the future of Doctor Who. Just make every episode worldwide event television. We're doing it with Stranger Things this year. I know it's its final season, but it feels like it's event television. The Netflix are making that feel incredibly important to watch, and we can easily do that for Doctor Who. We've done it before without any Disney help. We've seen that happen plenty of times, particularly I would say the season 4 finale with that dramatic regeneration cliffhanger. 50th anniversary Day of the Doctor is the finest example as well, where they got a worldwide simulcast release, as well as cinema outings in the UK. And again, as much as you can moan about the ratings on there, it did make quite a bit of money for the season 1 and 2 finales at the cinema. So again, transfer them to ratings. You can, it's have any cake and eat it. It did make a bit of extra money for the BBC, around about 300,000. That's definitely not something to just sniff at. But if you didn't want to go down the cinema route and then just have them all watching it at home, yeah, that would have been another bump in the ratings. Carrying on in this subsection then from Deadline, while BBC drama boss Lindy Salt thanked Disney for being terrific global partners, the Mouse House was not nearly as glowing, with the spokesperson simply confirming the BBC statement and noting that Gatois seasons will remain on Disney Plus outside the UK for the time being. Sources tell us that the BBC and Disney had initially planned to make a statement about Doctor Who's future after the premiere of the spin-off series The War Between the Land and the Sea, but Disney moved the announcement up. They clearly sat down and made a final decision in the past week or so, but it has been on the cards for a very long time, says Tony Jordan, who runs the Doctor Who Appreciation Society and speaks to the show's fan base every day. Jordan says Whovians believe Gatwa seasons have been patchy, stating there were some strong episodes in both, but the two-part finales were not particularly well regarded. A lack of episodes made it difficult for audiences to know Ncuti and his companions to really develop their storylines. Gatwa's experience felt somewhat fraught. He left after 2 seasons and later blamed burnt out, with the 33-year-old saying that he was getting old, and my body was tired. A Doctor Who source says the show suffered because Gatwa never fully embraced the role. There is more to that role than performing. You have got to be an ambassador for the brand and embrace being that generation's Doctor. Matt Smith and David Tennant fully understood the responsibility it carried. Going back to Jordan's thoughts from the Doctor Who Appreciation Society, yeah, I think we can universally agree that there was some stellar episodes in season 1 of 2 of Doctor Who. Dot and Bubble was my favourite. I think my favourite out of all of the episodes from that season. The Story in the Engine was very well regarded, as well as 73 Yards as well, and Lucky Day, I would say. I would throw in that category. But yeah, the season 1 and 2 finales, that's where it kind of fell apart and left probably quite a big sour taste in everyone's mouths. And yeah, looking back, as much as I had a lot of fun with season 2's finale, it's a glorious mess, and I imagine for a lot of people, was probably a disappointment, and we can't sort of argue with that. Again, you could probably blame RTD to a certain extent on that one. Probably would have been better if he pivoted a little bit away from that. I do feel that probably in hindsight that he was probably looking at what worked in his era and trying to sort of magic that up again. We'll bring back the Daleks for series 1, Cybermen for series 2, the Master for series 3, having a big sort of Marvel-ish finale for season 4, so series 4, and then with that year of specials with the 10th Doctor bringing back the Time Lord. So yeah, it's a bit of rinse and repeat from RTD. In other years, it's been successful. Just sadly for season 1 and 2 of Ncuti Gatwa's era, it just didn't work. But going to Ncuti Gatwa and that statement about him being not an ambassador for Doctor Who, I think that's a bit harsh myself. I think he's been a great ambassador for Doctor Who. I just don't think he's been given as much of an opportunity to be an ambassador as with other doctors in the past. Jodie Whittaker was phenomenal as the 13th Doctor outside of the series. You see her at Comic Cons, you see her at various Doctor Who conventions, and that little mini video that she did during the pandemic. I don't think she did loads of interviews during Doctor Who. I would say I do remember her appearing on Graham Norton, but I wouldn't say she had tons of sort of like TV interviews, where Ncuti, I think, did really, particularly on the Graham Norton show, and most recently being on the BBC One show as well. So all that, I feel like he did really, really well. But yeah, the sort of, apart from like maybe that Blue Peter thing that he did, I haven't seen any other sort of stuff outside, like say Children in Need or Comic Relief. Didn't really do much of that. But to say that he wasn't being an ambassador, I think is an utter lie. I think the stuff when he said, when Shooty said that he was too old and getting tired, it was a throwaway line. I think he was told you can't say the real reason why you left, so just make up any mumbo jumbo on the spot. And he tried, and yeah, he's been sort of tarred and feathered for that. I'm sticking with the statement that he said on the One Show earlier this year when he said, "Yeah, I haven't met the Daleks or the Cybermen, and I might just do that." I think really you can double down, and that's a bit of a hint on maybe where this Christmas special is heading towards. Fingers crossed. And again, if you're saying that Shooty wasn't an ambassador for Doctor Who, you should see my video about his time at the London Comic Con WinterCon, where he was rushed off his feet, signing photographs and still having a massive smile on his face. He was just honestly ravaged. But yeah, to say that he wasn't an ambassador for Doctor Who, I think that's a big fat lie. Another well-placed industry source says Doctor Who became too woke for Trump's USA, and this was a factor in Disney's minds when it came to a renewal. Under writer Davis, the series has cast transgender actress Yasmin Finney, featured drag queen Jinx Monsoon as a villain, and played host to a historic gay kiss between Gatwa and Jonathan Goff, some of which drew complaints from BBC viewers. Disney is incredibly unlikely, to have ever admit that politics were a factor in Doctor Who's cancellation, but Jimmy Kimmel's brief suspension was revealing of the company's desire to minimise MGGA, which is Make America Great Again, wrath. So the big Make America Great Again club. With Davis yet to commit to showrunning future seasons, it's possible that Doctor Who could have dialed down diversity under a Disney renewal, but the fact remains that celebrating difference has always been part of the show's DNA. So I feel like that is a big talking point that might just get sort of swept away in terms of when you're looking at the writing and the ratings. What's going on in America right now, whether you are for it or against it, that's your opinion. But you can't look at the current political landscape in America and, for Disney's point of view, does Doctor Who fit in that model? And at this moment, probably not. And you've got to sort of step away from that. And from a from a BBC's perspective, sort of walking away at this time now with Disney, probably the right thing to do. Because I won't want the show to lose its roots of diversity. I'm not saying jam it down everyone's throat and hammer it down. Sometimes it has gone a bit too far to the left in terms of its sort of moral stories and sort of diverse agendas. But I wouldn't say go far to the right and not have these moments such as the Doctor kissing Rogue. I think that's just shut up and put out. Just yeah. It happened. Get over it. And I'm glad that we have these wonderful actresses in form of Yasmin Finney and Jinx Monsoon. For me, Yasmin, I think, was used very little and could have been given a lot more of a prominent role as probably one of the first transgender actresses in Doctor Who. And I hope we see more of her, and hopefully Jinx Monsoon. I think she can easily deserve to come back as the villainous maestro in a future episode of Doctor Who. The final tagline, Doctor Who's post-Disney reset. Season 15 concluded on an ambiguous note, with Gatwa regenerating into Billie Piper's Rose Tyler, a Doctor Who companion of yesteryear. Jordan speculates that this will be temporary, and Davis will just use the just announced 2026 Christmas special to tie up some loose ends. Beyond that, Jordan thinks fresh blood might be required, stating nothing says that Russell will be showrunner from 2027 onwards. It might be time for a new showrunner to move it forwards. Committing to a Christmas special that is still 15 months away buys the BBC time to ponder how to push on now that it has lost a hefty chunk of its Doctor Who budget. It can be a reset and buys everyone time to make decisions, was how it was characterised by someone close to the series. The former Disney executive reckons the BBC will be able to spend as much as £2.5 to £3 million per episode, which could work out at around £1 million per episode from the BBC's own pocket, and any additional coming from a BBC Studios distribution advance in what is a tricky market for drama funding. That would see Doctor Who's budget slashed by around half from the Disney days. Once you've gone up, it's always difficult to go back down, the source says. You can cut budgets to a certain degree, but not by so much. Is the BBC really going to stump up even more for something showing decline? So just going, before I carry on with the rest of that article, if anyone can do Doctor Who on a low budget, it can be happen. It can do that. If anything, I would argue that the more lower budget episodes, such as 73 Yards and Lucky Day, was probably the more well regarded episodes of Doctor Who. I don't think Doctor Who needs a big budget phenomenon to be a successful episode. The heart is in the writing. I've always said that, even when it was first announced with Doctor Who and Disney coming together and money's going to be thrown at it. It's the quality rather than the quantity. Okay, that was always key. Quality in writing was key, and I don't think we had that as much because of all the big pizzazz of the Disney money. Don't get me wrong, Doctor Who looks as gorgeous as ever, but if you compare that to, say, Jodie Whittaker's era, just under the BBC, I think it still looked just as good. So, and that was without the big Disney bucks. So, can Doctor Who still look gorgeous? Absolutely. Without a Disney budget? Absolutely. The quality is in the writing. I think that's what we've been seriously lacking, not just in the RTD2 era, but again, sort of consistently from probably the Chibnall era, and I would say to the back end of the Stephen Moffat era as well. It's just getting that consistency right with the quality of writing. It has happened before, it can certainly happen again. Others point out that some of Davis's cheaper episodes were his best, such as season 14, 73 Yards. There we go, find it by example, which was praised by critics and Whovians. Budget limitations used to help the idiosyncrasies of the show. As an executive who used to work on Doctor Who, big budgets can cause a problem. A huge variety of voices tend to push towards the mediocre. But then the budget was nowhere near as big as shows as like The Mandalorian. So they were stuck in the middle. You can have planets, flying cars, and robots, but ultimately you are always going to get better versions elsewhere. Finding another American buyer for Doctor Who will be tough going, the ex-Disney source adds. While striking piecemeal deals across Europe and Latin America may prove difficult for a show that is ultimately quintessentially British, the source states, how do you suddenly convince a buyer to take Doctor Who when it hasn't been on their platform for so long? But is it still possible? We understand that prior to Disney Plus and the BBC striking the co-produced deal, an alternative option was presented to then BBC drama boss Piers Wegner, which would have raised up to £5 million an episode without input from a big American player. This plan could yet be revisited. The BBC Studios executive strikes a positive tone and thinks big American buyers are still in play, pointing to the $1 billion Taylor Sheridan NBC Universal deal as proof that the media giants are willing to pay big bucks. Could a new buyer be found? Could it be another new joint venture with another streaming platform? Absolutely. Would the BBC might want to pursue that? I would say mostly. But I imagine they'll be a lot more cautious and hopefully learn the lessons from their experience dealing with Disney. You know, it's a massive, massive corporation to deal with and a lot of figureheads to please. You know, it can't be an easy thing to do. But yeah, can I see BBC joining, say, Amazon or Netflix or HBO or Paramount? Yes. But I think a lot of things has to be part of that deal. The back catalogue, as I mentioned in my one of my previous videos, I think that's definitely key to presenting anything to a brand new audience. At least you got the back catalogue for people to go back and rewatch and make binge watchable episodes. And we got that as a plenty in Doctor Who. So I think that is key. At the very least, from the revived era, that should be uh, um, no non-negotiable. Really, that should be there. And I imagine that's probably what BBC are kind of doing with the revived era being disappearing from HBO Max back in July, and other sort of streaming services throughout this year. I think that is part of their big bargaining chip if they were ever to jump for a joint venture. But in terms of the Christmas special, what are we going to expect to see? Again, speculating at the moment. We know that RTD is going to be writing it. I've got a sneaky suspicion it's going to be some kind of lunatic version of Dimensions in Time, the dreaded charity that special that was Dimensions in Time. If you've not seen my review of that, check that out on the Timeline View YouTube channel. I think it's going to be a case of Billy coming back. And it'll just be a one and done, I think, for Billy. I think she's going to be far too busy with the Wednesday season 3. As I mentioned on the Timeline View YouTube channel, I think David's going to come back. I can see Shooty coming back, particularly even more so, putting piecing those two together with that announcement of the Christmas special and what Shooty Gatwa said on the BBC One show. I can see Daleks being flown into the mix as well. I think if it's going to be all timey-wimey, the Daleks are definitely the right villains to go for and have that back and forth with the 15th Doctor and the Daleks. Susan, I think, should definitely be as part of this as well and have that nice interaction from the first companion from the 60s with the first companion from the revived era. I think this is what's going to be. It's going to be a big jumble pot of some kind of RTD versions of Dimension in Time. That's my theory. And if anything, it should be 90 minutes. Do a massive 90-minute spectacular on Christmas Day and let that be the BBC's jewel in the crown. Wrap everything up in the RTD2 era and make it a 90-minute spectacular because, as I mentioned from a previous video, this year it's all about Stranger Things. Nothing else is going to penetrate that orbit that is the Stranger Things Series 5 finale. Last year, I would arguably say it was all about Wallace and Gromit. BBC had an absolute stellar Christmas last year, with Doctor Who being part of that as well. ITV was absolutely blown out of the water for UK. BBC need to do that next year. And at the heart of it is Doctor Who. Strictly Come Dancing, I think, is in a bit of hot water. I think it's in a bit of a trouble. I think the guaranteed safety for the BBC at this time is Doctor Who. Make that great again. Screw Magna. What was it? MG. Make America great again. Not to be mean. Make Doctor Who great again. That's what we need. That's what we need. Let's do that. Should RTD step down? I think that's a video for another day. If anything, for 2027 onwards, fresh writing, fresh new writers that wants to have a go at Doctor Who. I think that's what's needed. It could probably still be under the stewardship of RTD or Big Bad Wolf Studios. That's fine. But it definitely needs some fresh writing. And that can be the big reset of start again, bring something fresh, bring something new. Because I don't think we've had that quite as much in the RTD2 era. I think it has been a little bit rinse and repeat in hindsight. It's not been terrible. There has been some fantastic moments, but obviously the sort of rinse and repeat that RTD has done for the season 1 and 2 finales just didn't hit how it should have done. And I think that was because you're trying to do that for a big wide audience that had no idea who Sutek is, and without any sort of context to put it in. You know, even though we had Tales of the TARDIS here in the UK, it wasn't distributed worldwide. That was a big mistake, in my opinion. You know, I don't want to be like, let's all blame RTD and, you know, pitchfork and torches ready. I do think he has to be accountable for some of the failings in this era. But on the other side, he could have been sold a false stream from Disney and BBC of, oh yes, we're going to do the massive universe. We're going to make sure that Disney's got all the back catalogue, and you can go and run with bringing back some classic monsters. That's what we want. He could have been told that. I don't know. I'll leave that to you to decide. But I think that's what Doctor Who should be going forward. It's been a very interesting article from Deadline. Has it been too woke? I'm on the fence on that one. You know, I'm all for diversity, and Doctor Who is a great ambassador for that. But from the American landscape at the moment, maybe it's just not the right time to produce that. So as much as people say about Doctor Who's being seen as a failure, I don't think so. It's gone wrong in places, but it's a case of just, you know, tear it up, start again, you know, and that's what we should view, particularly the reality war. That's my opinion. But I'd love to know your opinions about everything that was discussed in the Deadline article. Obviously, please be kind for everyone's opinions, but I'd love to have a chat with you all about this in the comments. But thank you very much for watching this video. Sorry if it's been a bit of a ramble, but I feel like it was very important to sort of talk about the aftermath of the Doctor Who Disney era. So if you like what you've seen and hear, please like, share and subscribe. Hit the cloister bell for more notifications. Come say hello and follow me on Facebook and X. And do check out my other fantastic Doctor Who related content on Timey Wimey Review TikTok. Of course, right here on the Timey Wimey Review YouTube channel. Thank you for your love and support as always. Until we meet again.